She was on her knees when the click of metal stopped her cold. The scrub brush paused mid-stroke. Her hands hovered over a dark, crusted stain on the wooden floorboards, the smell of iron sharp in her nose. A rifle barrel pressed against her shoulder, steady and cold. "Don't move," the voice said, low and hard. She froze. She didn't even dare to breathe. "I'm not stealing," she whispered, her voice brittle. He didn't lower the gun. He only stepped closer, eyes scanning, hands tense. "You're in my brother's house," he said. She flinched. "He's dead." "I know," he said, almost a whisper, almost doubt. Her eyes flicked toward the wall. A sheriff's badge hung there, dusty, solemn. She didn't touch it. He noticed. A slight twitch of his hand betrayed him. "I have nowhere else," she said quickly. "No money. No place. I ran from worse." He stayed silent, watching, calculating. The rifle didn't move. Her knees ached. Her hands shook, but she kept scrubbing. The floor was stubborn. Blood hardened like old paint, refusing to let her clean it fully. "One night," he said finally. "No promises past that." She nodded, didn't speak. Relief and fear tangled in her chest. He backed away, still keeping his eyes on her, then left the room. The door clicked behind him. She kept scrubbing. The cabin smelled of dust and decay, old wood curling at the edges, the faint tang of iron and smoke. She noticed broken furniture pushed against corners, marks in the walls like teeth had tried to bite into them. The air was heavy. She scrubbed and scrubbed, counting each board she polished, measuring time and motion rather than seconds. Her arms ached, but the ache grounded her. A grounding she needed to survive. She whispered under her breath, murmurs of nothing, prayers of survival. He returned hours later, rifle still slung across his back, eyes unreadable. "You missed a spot," he said, pointing to a dark streak near the corner. "I didn't see it," she said, lowering her head. "That's where it happened," he said, voice flat, as if saying it aloud might make it less true. She didn't look up. "I'll clean it," she said. Her hands moved over the wood again, careful, reverent. He circled her, silent, observing the way her fingers avoided the badge, the way her eyes stayed on the floor, never meeting his. "You run a lot?" he asked finally, short and clipped. She didn't answer immediately. "I run to stay alive," she said. The words were bitter in her mouth, like swallowing ash. "From what?" he asked. "From everything that wanted me dead," she replied. He didn't press further. He never pressed further. She had noticed before how the walls here listened, how they creaked in judgment. The cabin had seen too much. "Your brother?" she asked suddenly, voice trembling. He wore that badge until it killed him," he said. His hands twitched, brushing the rifle's strap. She didn't understand what he meant. She didn't ask. Silence hung thick between them. She kept scrubbing. He slid a plate across the table toward her without sitting, and she ate with her hands, fingers greasy with sweat and soap. The smell of cooked meat and smoke filled the room. She chewed in silence. He watched. Every twitch of her shoulders. Every gulp. The cabin was quiet again, except for her scrubbing and the occasional groan of old floorboards beneath the weight of the house. She paused to look at the badge. The silver was dulled, tarnished with age, hanging crookedly on the wall like a ghost. She didn't touch it. He didn't demand it. Outside, the wind hissed through cracks in the walls, carrying the scent of wet earth and wood smoke. He locked the door from the outside, paused, listened to the sound of her continuing to clean, then stepped back. She didn't hear him leave. The silence pressed down on her. She felt like a shadow in a house full of ghosts. She scrubbed the stain until her knuckles bled. Every motion kept fear at bay. The cabin watched. The badge watched. And for the first time in a long while, she felt the raw weight of being alive, if only for one night. The rifle in the corner, the badge on the wall, the smell of blood and soap, all of it was a reminder she was not yet dead, not yet caught, not yet claimed. She kept scrubbing, listening, breathing. waiting. The door clicked open. She didn't look up, keeping her hands pressed into the dark wood, rubbing at a stubborn streak near the corner. "You skipped that corner," he said, standing in the doorway. She froze, shoulders tight. "I didn't see it," she said quietly. He stepped closer, eyes hard, voice flat. "That's where it happened." She swallowed and nodded. "I'll clean it." Her hands moved again, slow, precise, almost ceremonious. He circled the room without touching a thing, just watching. The rifle was gone now, but his shadow carried its weight. He stopped by the wall, hand brushing the badge, almost touching it, then pulling away. "You run a lot," he said, abrupt. She didn't answer at once. Finally, "I run to keep breathing." "From what?" he asked, voice low, testing. "Everything that wanted me dead," she said. Silence. He kept circling, silent, observing. She noticed the way his hands twitched, fingers brushing walls as though the wood could tell him secrets he had forgotten. "You clean well," he said. She didn't look at him. "I can clean anything. Blood. Ash. Shame." Her voice trembled on the last word. He stopped. "Shame?" he asked. "Yeah. People throw it around like it's dirt. I can wash it off." He looked at her then, really looked, and the hard edge of his face softened slightly. His brother's badge hung crookedly on the wall, silvered dulled with dust, and she still didn't touch it. He exhaled, long and low. "He wore this badge until it killed him," he said, almost to himself. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. She moved to the far corner, scrubbing the dark patch until the wood was warm beneath her palms. "Why do you keep cleaning?" he asked. "Because it's all I have," she said. "All I can control." He nodded, slowly. "Nothing more." Her voice was small, honest, sharp. "I can stay quiet. Cook. Clean. I can keep myself out of your way." His eyes flicked to the locked cabinet in the corner. "Don't touch it," he said. "Not the well either. Not the papers. Not the floorboards under the floor." She nodded again, swallowing hard. "Understood." He crouched slightly, glancing at the boards she had scrubbed. "You missed a spot," he said again, pointing. "I saw it," she said. "I'll fix it." He didn't speak. He just watched, shadows shifting in the weak sunlight slicing through grimy windows. She worked. The sweat on her forehead ran into her eyes, but she didn't wipe it away. Not yet. Not until the stain was gone or until he said stop. A long pause. Then he spoke, quieter this time. "You've survived before," she flinched, hands freezing on the scrub brush. "Yes." "How?" "I did what I had to. Stayed low. Stayed quiet. Survived." His eyes narrowed. "And now?" "Now I keep going." He didn't say anything. He just let her finish the corner, arms trembling, knuckles white. Finally, he stepped back. A plate of food slid across the rough-hewn table, warm and smelling of smoked meat and salt. She looked at it, then at him. He didn't sit. Just waited, watching. She took it, hands shaking, and ate in silence. Each bite measured, careful, small. She could feel the weight of his gaze, the cabin listening, the walls judging. Her mind ran through the hours to come, cleaning, scrubbing, waiting, surviving. She swallowed fear, swallowed hunger. He stood at the far end of the room, finally lowering his head, voice almost lost in the quiet. "One night. That's all you get." She nodded. Her back ached. Her knees ached. But the ache was grounding, tethering her to the here, to the cabin, to the fact she was still alive. The badge glinted faintly in the weak light. She didn't touch it. He didn't demand it. He turned and left, leaving the door open this time, letting her work. She kept scrubbing, each stroke steady, silent. The cabin breathed around her, heavy with old blood and secrets. Outside, the wind rattled the eaves, carrying the faint tang of wet dirt and smoke. Inside, she scrubbed, paused, scrubbed again, listening. Every shadow could be movement, every creak a ghost. But she kept going. She had survived worse. She could survive tonight. She would. She woke on the cold floor, stiff and sore, the first weak sunlight filtering through grimy windows. He was already standing, motionless, in the corner. Watching. She froze. "You don't sleep there," he said, voice low and clipped. "Where then?" she asked, rubbing her shoulders, trying to shake off the ache. "Not his bed," he said. She nodded. Understood. Silence hung thick, broken only by her shallow breathing and the quiet creak of the cabin settling. He moved toward the table, hands brushing old newspapers covering bullet holes. She followed with her eyes. The papers named old officials, long dead, names etched over with dust and grime. She touched nothing. "Rules," he said. "Don't touch the badge. Don't ask about the well. Don't go in the locked room. Keep to yourself." She nodded again. "I clean. I cook. I stay quiet." Her voice was firm, careful. He didn't reply immediately, only measured her, weighing every gesture. The room smelled of old wood, charred patches, and yesterday's dirt. She knelt by the stove and began rubbing a blackened pan, her movements deliberate. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, silent, the only sound the soft creak of floorboards beneath his boots. She glanced at the wall once. Bullet holes patched with newspaper, faded ink, a story of power and decay, and shivered. Her fingers tightened around the pan handle. "Sleep well?" he asked suddenly, startling her. "On the floor?" "Hardly," she muttered. He didn't answer. He just walked past, eyes flicking to the badge, then away. Silence again. The weight of it pressed down, thick and heavy, and she welcomed it. She could work in silence, could survive in silence. She scrubbed again, ignoring the rising ache in her knees and arms. Something shifted beneath the floorboards, a sound faint but distinct. She froze. The cabin listened, the air waiting. She tilted her head, listening to the uneven rhythm of her own heartbeat and the creak below. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. He didn't answer. "It's probably nothing," he finally said, voice quiet but firm. "Who fell in?" she pressed. He shook his head. "No one," he said, eyes dark, scanning the shadows. She shivered and turned back to the stove, pretending she hadn't heard. The bed loomed across the room, clean, made with folded blankets, empty and uninviting. She understood the boundaries. Not his bed. Not the well. Not the locked cabinet. Everything else, she claimed. She worked in the space he allowed, brushing dust from corners, stacking firewood, wiping grime from the windows. The sunlight cut through the smudges, painting lines on the floor like bars. She scrubbed within them, careful. He finally broke the silence. "You can't touch everything." "I don't intend to," she said, her hands wet and raw. "But I'll fix it," she added, indicating the floorboards she had already scrubbed. His eyes narrowed but softened a fraction. "Keep it that way," he said, stepping toward the corner and standing still again. She felt the weight of his gaze like a wall pressing her down, but it didn't break her. She wasn't here to be broken. She was here to survive. She paused, hearing the breathing again beneath the floorboards, soft, rhythmic, almost deliberate. Her hands stilled over the pan. He didn't comment, only stood and stared, listening. She imagined the wood holding secrets, bones, whispers of men and women long gone. The cabin was alive in its own way, and tonight, so was she. She glanced at the badge again. It gleamed faintly in the sunlight. She didn't touch it. She never would. Not yet. She moved to the floor and knelt, fingers tracing the pattern of dust and dirt. She worked silently, deliberately, respecting the rules, claiming the cabin her own way. The floorboards creaked beneath her knees. Something moved below. She ignored it. Surviving meant ignoring things. Surviving meant keeping her hands clean enough, her head down enough, her heart steady enough. The day stretched thin across the room, a quiet, tense rhythm. He didn't leave, didn't speak much, only observed, a ghostly presence in the corner. She scrubbed, stacked, wiped, swept, and waited. Every sound mattered. Every shadow mattered. Every breath mattered. She stepped outside, the cabin door creaking behind her. The air was damp, sharp with the scent of earth and old wood. She moved toward the well, the stones blackened with age and moss. Her hands gripped the cold rope, pulling the bucket up slowly. Water sloshed inside, the metallic tang sharp. She knelt beside it, staring into the dark liquid. The wind whispered through the trees, low and steady, and she thought she heard voices. Voices that sounded like hers. Voices that weren't hers. "Did you hear that?" she asked, voice barely rising above a whisper. He appeared suddenly at her side, hands gripping her shoulders, pulling her back. "Don't stand there," he said, urgent, low. "What?" she asked, heart hammering. "The well," he said. "It talks. Don't listen." She frowned, leaning toward the water again. "Who fell in?" she pressed. His eyes darkened. "No one," he said sharply. His grip was firm, almost panicked, and she realized for the first time that he feared something more than just intruders. She crouched, brushing dirt from the rim of the well, and saw carvings, names etched deep into the stone, worn smooth by time. Women's names. Old, angry, almost pleading. She traced them with her fingers, a silent acknowledgement. He grabbed her arm, dragging her back, voice harsh now. "Stop it," she froze. "The names," she whispered, barely audible. "Leave them." His face was pale, shaking. She had never seen him like this. For the first time, he shouted. "Get away from it!" She stumbled back, staring at him. Rage and fear tangled in his eyes. "It's just names," she said softly. "Nothing to hurt us." He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Nothing to hurt us? Nothing to hurt us?" "Those names," he trailed off, breathing hard. She kept her hands folded in front of her, unbroken, unafraid. "They're the ones buried by men who forgot them," she said. "The land remembers what men throw away." He stared at her, the shouting gone now, replaced by a sharp, tense silence. They stood side by side, the wind carrying the sound of trees rattling, water sloshing in the bucket. Her gaze kept returning to the carvings. One name in particular caught her eye, faint but deliberate, almost hidden. Her breath caught. She began. He shook his head. "You don't know. You can't know." She didn't respond. The well seemed to murmur around her, carrying echoes of the past, whispers that seemed almost real. She swallowed. The bucket trembled in her hands. He let go of her arm, but didn't move away. "I try to forget," he said finally, voice rough. "They won't let me." She knelt again, careful now, placing the bucket down. "They won't let anyone forget," she said softly. "Not those who listen." His fists clenched. "I said leave it," he said, quieter this time, but still urgent. She didn't move. She only traced another name, slow, deliberate, a silent acknowledgement of stories hidden, lives erased. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the weight of the past pressing against them both. The cabin behind them seemed smaller, distant, and the trees whispered around them. Finally, he grabbed her arm again, not roughly this time, but firm, dragging her back toward the cabin. "Inside," he said. The urgency in his voice made her obey. She didn't resist. The cabin door slammed behind them, echoing through the small clearing. He locked it from the inside, the sound sharp, final. She pressed her hands to the wood, feeling the vibrations, feeling the weight of the world outside, of names carved deep into stone, of lives buried and remembered. Her chest heaved. She had heard them. She had seen the proof. The past was alive in ways he could not control. He sank into a chair, head in his hands, silence heavy around him. She stood across from him, breathing steady now, the wind still humming against the cabin walls. You can't ignore it, she said quietly. I know, he whispered. The words were not for her, not exactly, but they filled the space. She watched him, studying the tight lines of his face, the weight pressing down, and she realized survival was no longer just about hiding or cleaning. It was about listening. About acknowledging. About keeping the past from consuming the present. She glanced at the door, at the locked cabinet, at the badge, and then back at him. He looked up once, eyes tired, haunted. It talks, he muttered. She nodded. I heard, she said, voice soft but steady. And for the first time, he seemed to accept it. The cabin was not empty. The well was not silent. The land held its stories. And she had heard them. She was on her knees again, scrubbing a stubborn stain near the fireplace when she noticed a yellowed envelope tucked beneath a loose floorboard. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it out. The handwriting was familiar, jagged, precise, her brother's name scrawled across the front. Her chest tightened. She opened it slowly, reading the words aloud, voice low and trembling. Your family ran this county, she said, eyes narrowing on him. He didn't flinch. He only watched, silent, like a shadow waiting for sun. Say it, she demanded, sharper this time. What, he said, calm but taut. Your family ran this county, she repeated. The envelope trembled in her hands. Say it, she said again, louder. He exhaled, a slow, low sound, and muttered, my brother signed the order. He said it was legal, she said, voice breaking. She slammed the envelope down on the table. Her hands shook, but she kept them pressed flat, holding herself steady. Why, she asked. Why did he do it? He ran a hand across his face, pulling at his beard, eyes dark. I don't know, he admitted finally. I wasn't there. I didn't, his voice cracked. I didn't stop it. She stared at him. The badge gleamed in the sunlight, silver dulled with dust, hanging crookedly on the wall. It wasn't honor, he said quietly. It was permission. Everything else followed from that. She felt something shift in her chest, something bitter and raw. You knew, she accused. You let it happen, she spat, voice rising. I didn't know, he said, desperate now, hands gripping the table. I tried to stop him. I tried. Tried, she echoed. Tried doesn't bring him back. Tried doesn't fix what's gone, she said. Silence pressed in, thick and heavy, the cabin holding its breath around them. Outside, wind rattled the eaves. The floor creaked under her knees. The envelope sat between them, yellowed, fragile, accusing. Her voice softened, quieter now, trembling. I stayed alive for this, she said. The words floated in the room, small but fierce. He didn't answer. He only lowered his head, eyes closing, hands shaking. She sat back on her heels, still close to the floorboard she had cleaned, tracing her finger along the rough wood. The stain was gone, polished to a dull shine, but the mark of what had happened remained, like a bruise under skin. He finally looked up. His eyes were haunted, wet with memory, filled with shame and something else, fear, maybe. I wanted justice, he said softly. I wanted to fix it. She shook her head. Justice? No. Not here. Not then. She stood slowly, hands gripping the table edge. We survive. That's all we do. He nodded, slow, deliberate. The badge on the wall caught the sunlight again. She didn't touch it. He didn't demand it. She reached for the envelope again, holding it out to him. Do something with this, she said. Burn it. Hide it. Destroy it. Just don't let it hang over the living. He took it from her, hesitated, then slid it into the fireplace. Flames flickered, swallowing paper, swallowing names. He exhaled, long and low. She felt the tension ease slightly but didn't move away from him. The weight of history pressed down, heavy, stubborn, like mud clinging to boots. I stayed alive for this, she repeated, quieter now, almost a whisper, to herself. He glanced at her, finally acknowledging the resolve in her eyes. The cabin was silent again, except for the soft crackle of fire. Her hands rested on the table, arms trembling from the effort of both cleaning and confronting the truth. The air smelled faintly of smoke, old wood, and iron. Shadows from the flames danced across the walls, casting the badge in shifting light. He spoke finally, voice low and almost ashamed. It wasn't just him. It was all of us. Families, towns, the rules. We carried it forward, without thinking, without stopping. She nodded. I see it now. That's why we survive. Because no one else will. He didn't answer, only watched her, quiet, haunted. The envelope and the flames curled and blackened. She knelt again beside the fire, watching, feeling the heat, feeling the weight of survival. For the first time in days, she let herself breathe fully. Not relief. Not safety. Just the steady rhythm of being alive. Her eyes flicked to the badge. She didn't reach for it. The room was full of memory, loss, and quiet, but also a strange fragile hope. She had stayed alive. She had witnessed the truth. And somehow, that mattered. She sat on the floor near the fireplace, her hands folded in her lap, eyes on the burned envelope. The fire's glow painted the walls with flickering shadows, highlighting the crooked sheriff's badge and old bullet holes patched with newspaper. Her chest ached with more than fatigue. It ached with stories she had carried for years. No one filed reports, she said finally, voice low, almost a confession. He didn't answer, only leaned against the wall, eyes fixed on the flames. They laughed, she said, looking up at him. Who? His jaw tightened. They always do, she added, bitter. I didn't, he said quietly, almost too late. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. You didn't what? I didn't. I didn't stop it. Didn't save her, he admitted. Silence hung heavy, the kind that pressed into bones. Outside, the wind rattled the cabin, carrying the smell of damp earth and distant smoke. She stood slowly, brushing the dust from her skirt. Women don't get graves here, she said, voice steady. They don't get remembered. They're shoved into corners, erased, whispered about, ignored. He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her eyes. The well, she said, pointing toward the back door, toward the stone rim carved with names. It's not superstition. It's memory. It's proof. He flinched, gripping his hands together. Don't go near it, he said, low. It's dangerous. It's just names, she said. The land keeps what men throw away. That's all. She moved closer to the fireplace, kneeling to warm her hands. I ran. I survived. I cleaned. I stayed quiet. I kept myself alive because no one else cared. He finally met her gaze, his eyes dark, wet with memory. My brother, he thought he could control it all. Thought he could erase everything by force. Didn't see that fire burns deeper than guns. Her lips tightened. He didn't know women's lives, she said. He never would. No one here does. Not really. The cabin's silence was almost suffocating. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, trees creaked like bones, and she imagined the echoes of every woman buried, burned, forgotten. She could almost hear them, faintly, in the shadows between the walls. I see it now, she said softly. The way they tried to hide everything, erase every trace. But it stays. It always stays. He finally spoke, voice trembling. I watched my brother die, alone, thinking he was righteous. He shook his head. Shame killed him. Not justice. She nodded, standing and walking toward the well outside the door, steps deliberate. He followed, silent. She traced a deep carving in the stone, running her fingers along the name of a woman who had been erased long ago. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint echo of voices, of lives ignored. She deserves to be remembered, she said softly. All of them do. He nodded. I never thought about it that way. I thought the badge, the law, meant everything. But it doesn't, he said, voice low. She smiled faintly, bitter and sad. It never does. That's why we survive. We remember for them. He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time, his posture relaxed, the tension easing. They stood together in silence, the wind outside carrying the sounds of distant fields, rustling leaves, and the faint echo of the past. It's not easy, he said, voice barely audible. No, she replied. But necessary. If we don't remember, they disappear entirely. And I can't let that happen. The cabin behind them seemed smaller, dim, but somehow safe. The badge on the wall gleamed faintly, tarnished silver catching the flicker of the dying fire. She didn't touch it. He didn't move to stop her. The two of them shared the space without speaking, acknowledging the weight of history, loss, and survival. For the first time, they stood not as hunter and hunted, or survivor and warden, but as witnesses. Witnesses to lives that had been erased, women who had been silenced, and the land that held their memory anyway. Finally, she said softly, voice calm, almost like a vow, we don't bury them, but we remember. That's our job now. He nodded, letting her words settle, their rhythm echoing through the quiet cabin. The well behind them remained still, but the names carved into stone felt alive, waiting. Waiting to be remembered. They stood side by side, the firelight flickering across their faces, and for the first time, she felt that surviving meant more than hiding. It meant witnessing. It meant holding the past, fragile, unbroken, and refusing to let it vanish. The cabin smelled of smoke and old wood. She held a stack of papers in her hands, fragile and yellowed, the ink faded with time. Orders, deeds, letters, evidence of lives controlled, erased, and forgotten. He stood behind her, silent, eyes dark, watching the way her hands shook slightly as she gathered them. This ends families, she said, voice low but steady. He exhaled, sharp, almost bitter. It already did, he muttered. She dropped the first sheet into the fireplace. The flames caught instantly, curling the edges, sending the smell of burnt paper into the small room. What happens after? She asked, voice small but firm. He didn't answer immediately. Finally, we stay, he said. She nodded. She held the next sheet carefully, watching it ignite, flames reflecting in her eyes. She could feel the heat against her skin, the weight of the past lifting, smoke curling toward the ceiling like a slow exhale. He moved closer, picking up a bundle of papers, sliding them into the fire one by one. She felt the tension in his hands, the tightness in his jaw. He worked slowly, deliberately, almost ritualistically. Do you feel it? She asked. What? He glanced at her, eyes shadowed. The weight leaving the cabin? He didn't answer. Only watched the flames, watching the letters curl, crumble, disappear. The badge caught the light, silver dulled by years, tarnished and crooked. She didn't touch it. He didn't move. The two of them worked together in silence, a fragile rhythm forming between them. Papers dropped, flames consumed, smoke rose, and they kept going. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, carrying the scent of wet earth and distant trees. The cabin seemed smaller now, lighter, but still heavy with memory. She picked up a letter addressed to a woman she had never met. The ink was smudged, words almost illegible. She read a line aloud, "She cannot be trusted. Remove her." Her voice cracked slightly. He shook his head. They never learned, he said. Never cared. She let the paper drop into the fire, watching the edges curl and blacken. The heat pressed against her face, but she didn't flinch. They burned the orders signed by men long dead. Deeds granting power over land, over lives, over women who had been silenced. Letters confessing crimes, confessing complicity, confessing fear. Each one fed the flames. Each one lifted a weight from their shoulders. She inhaled, smoky and sharp, letting it fill her lungs. He inhaled beside her, but his shoulders remained tense, heavy with the shame he carried. A distant sound drifted through the wind, a truck, tires crunching gravel. She paused, hands hovering over the next bundle. He didn't flinch. He only nodded slightly, signaling her to continue. The fire flickered, shadows dancing across the walls, across the badge, across the holes patched with newspaper. She let the smoke curl around her, letting it carry away the anger, the fear, the memory of orders that had hurt, destroyed, silenced. The last sheet went into the fire. Flames roared, consuming it, consuming the authority written on the paper. She stepped back, brushing ash from her hands. He stood beside her, finally letting his shoulders drop, the tightness easing. The cabin was quieter, the air lighter, though still thick with smoke. The badge on the wall caught a final flicker of light, silver melting into the shadows. She looked at him. "It's done," she said softly. He nodded. "It won't change the past. But it can stop the next." They both exhaled, the rhythm of their breathing filling the room. The fire crackled, throwing shadows across their faces, illuminating the tension that had finally eased. The wind outside moaned through the cracks, carrying away smoke, carrying away whispers, carrying away some small piece of the weight the cabin had held for years. She touched nothing, said nothing more. He didn't speak either. They stood together, side by side, watching the fire consume the past. Beyond the windows, the land stretched quiet, fields dark and empty, waiting. The trucks passed somewhere distant, indifferent. Inside, the cabin exhaled. The papers were gone. The past had burned, leaving only heat, ash, and smoke. She felt the weight lift slightly from her chest. He did too, though he still carried more than either of them would ever say aloud. The trucks arrived mid-morning, dust curling behind the tires as they slowed toward the cabin. She saw them first, 4 men, polished boots, hands hovering near the doors, eyes sharp and calculating. He didn't move at first, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed. She stayed behind him, hands folded, body taut with alertness. "We're checking records," one of the men said as they approached. His voice was polite, but the edge in it made her pulse tighten. "They're gone," she said immediately, stepping forward before he could speak. The words startled even her. "You sure?" another asked, glancing at her, eyebrows raised. "Burned," she said, voice steady, calm, refusing to tremble. They paused, exchanging looks. She noticed him behind her, silent, the shadow of a rifle at his side, a subtle reminder she was not alone. "You speak too much," he muttered softly, a warning. She didn't answer, only held his gaze for a moment, letting him know she understood. The men shifted uneasily, noting the confidence in her stance, the way she didn't flinch, the way she refused to cower. "You," one said, eyes flicking toward him. "She answers for both of us," he finally said, voice low, clipped. They looked at each other, surprised by the unspoken authority in his words and hers. One of them stepped closer, polished boots crunching gravel. "We need those records," he said, voice sharper now. "They don't exist," she said. "We destroyed them. Burned them." Silence fell, heavy and brittle, like ice. He stayed behind her, silent, letting her words carry their weight. The men's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, the tension was thick enough to choke. "You don't understand," one said finally. "These documents are dead," she cut him off. "All of them. Burned. Nothing left." He stepped back, jaw tight. "Do you think you can hide from us?" one demanded. She looked at him, unwavering. "No. But you can't take what's already gone. That's not hiding. That's surviving." Her voice was steady, blunt, sharper than any bullet. The wind shifted, carrying dust and leaves across the open ground. The trucks idled behind them, tires crunching the dirt. He stayed back, hands relaxed now, silent but dangerous in his calm. She noticed how their gazes flicked between him and her, weighing, calculating, realizing she was not weak, she was not afraid. She stepped forward another pace, shoulders squared, gaze unwavering. "We're gone," she said, blunt, precise. "You won't find us." One man spat on the ground, frustration and disbelief mixed. "You're lucky the law doesn't care," he muttered. "Lucky," she echoed, soft but unwavering. "We're not hiding from law," she said. "We're hiding from their mistakes. The ones that killed and erased. They burned. They're done." He looked at her, startled, and she met his gaze, steady, unflinching. He realized that the fire had changed something, her words, her stance, her presence. The truck's engines rumbled impatiently, and the men finally exchanged a look, a silent agreement that the cabin and the people inside were no longer worth immediate pursuit. "You should leave," one said finally, voice clipped. She didn't move. "We are leaving," he said quietly, voice low, final. They hesitated, glanced at each other again, then climbed into the trucks. Tires spun, dust rose, and then they were gone. She exhaled slowly, feeling the tension ease slightly but still thick in her chest. He stepped forward, silent, standing beside her. She looked at him. He didn't speak at first, only watched the horizon, the place where the trucks had disappeared. Finally, he said, voice low, almost impressed, "You did most of the talking." She shrugged, brushing dust from her skirt. "Someone had to. Someone had to show them we're not afraid. We're not hiding anymore." He nodded, eyes scanning the distant road, then turning back to the cabin. She felt a small surge of pride, quiet, steady. The land behind them was quiet again, holding its own stories, its own weight. She stepped closer to him. "They won't come back soon," she said. "Maybe never." He didn't reply, only let his eyes linger on hers, silently acknowledging her courage, her voice, her strength. The wind rattled the cabin again, soft and insistent. She let her hands rest on the table, finally relaxed enough to feel it beneath her fingers. He moved beside her, brushing a speck of dust from the windowsill, small gestures, careful, familiar. Outside, the land was quiet, fields stretching, the cabin holding its secrets tightly. Inside, for the first time in days, the weight of fear eased, replaced with the fragile certainty of survival. She had spoken, and she had protected. They had survived together, side by side, silent witnesses to what the past had taken and what they had chosen to hold. The trucks were gone, dust settling back into the earth like it had never been disturbed. She stood by the door, listening long after the sound faded. He moved first, slow, deliberate, setting the latch, checking the window, testing the lock with a practiced hand. "They won't come back today," he said. "No," she replied. "They came to see if we were afraid." He glanced at her. "And?" "They didn't find it." He leaned against the table, exhaled, then finally looked at her fully. "You didn't hesitate," he said. "Neither did you," she answered. Silence followed, softer now, earned. The cabin felt different. Not lighter. Just settled. He cleared his throat. "You can stay," he said. She didn't smile. She didn't nod right away. "I already am," she said. He watched her for a moment, then nodded once. "Forever," he added, the word heavy, deliberate. "Good," she said. They didn't shake hands. They didn't mark the moment. They just moved. She picked up a hammer. He lifted a loose board by the window. Work replaced ceremony. "That frame's rotting," she said. "I know," he replied. "Been meaning to fix it." "Meaning and doing aren't the same," she said. He gave a quiet huff that might have been a laugh. "You always talk like that?" "Only when it matters." They worked side by side. Nails. Wood. Small repairs that made the cabin hold its shape better. She patched cracks with practiced hands. He steadied boards, measured twice, cut once. The rhythm settled them. "You don't owe me," he said suddenly. She paused, then kept hammering. "I'm not here because I owe you," she said. "Good," he replied. "Shelter isn't charity." "No," she said. "It's choice." They moved to the well as the sun dipped low. The air cooled. He brought stones. She brought chalk. Together, they sealed it, slow and careful. "Not buried," she said. "Marked." He nodded. She knelt and carved names into the top stone, each letter steady. He stood watch, eyes scanning the tree line, then the road, then back to her hands. "You don't flinch," he said. "I learned not to," she replied. From who? From men who thought silence was kindness. They set the final stone. He pressed it down. She brushed dust away. The well was quiet now, not erased, not hidden. Remembered. It won't bother you, he asked. She stood, wiped her hands. It never bothered me, she said. Ignoring it did. He considered that, then nodded. Back inside, they fixed the table leg. Rehung a shelf. Swept ash from the hearth. The badge stayed on the wall, untouched, watching. You going to take it down? He asked. Not yet, she said. Why? Because pretending it never existed is another lie. He didn't argue. Night came soft and sure. They ate without rush. The quiet wasn't sharp anymore. It held. He washed the plate. She dried it. Their movements matched without effort. They'll talk, he said. They always do. Let them, she replied. We're done explaining. He glanced at her, something like relief crossing his face. She laid out a bedroll near the stove. He hesitated, then spoke. You don't have to sleep there. She met his eyes. I choose it, she said. He nodded. Choice mattered here. They sat by the fire, not close, not far. The cabin creaked, settling into the night. You afraid it'll come back? He asked. She shook her head. No, why? Because we remember. He looked at the well through the window, then back to her. The fire dimmed. The cabin stood. And for the first time, staying felt like a decision, not a trap. She rose before the light settled, moving through the cabin without waking him. The floor knew her steps now. She swept slowly, careful, not erasing but tending, lifting ash from the hearth, wiping soot from the stones, straightening what had been left crooked on purpose. This was not cleaning to disappear. This was keeping. She paused at the wall, fingers hovering near the badge, then lowered her hand. Not today. She set it straight instead. He stirred, watching from the chair, saying nothing. You're up early, he said. I wanted the quiet, she replied. He nodded, eyes following her movements. Last time, he asked. No, she said. Just different. He stood, stretching the stiffness from his shoulders, then helped her lift a loose plank back into place. The wood settled with a soft thud. The cabin breathed. They ate in silence. It wasn't empty. It held. He washed. She dried. You afraid it'll come back? He asked, breaking the rhythm. She didn't look up. No, he waited. Why? She set the plate down, steady. Because we remember. He absorbed that, slow, then nodded. They stepped outside together. The morning was pale and cool. The well sat sealed, names cut clean into stone. He brushed dirt from the letters with his thumb. They won't be lost, he said. They won't, she agreed. A bird startled from the fence and flew off. The land did not feel lighter. It felt honest. Inside, she gathered the rags, folded them, placed them by the sink. He fixed a hinge. You're staying, he said, not asking. I am, she said. He hesitated, then added, You don't owe me. She met his eyes. I'm not paying, she said. I'm choosing. He smiled once, quick and gone. They sat where the light reached the floor, the place she had scrubbed first. He traced the grain with his boot. It won't ever look new, he said. Good, she replied. New forgets. He glanced at the badge again. What do we do with that? She considered. We let it be what it is, she said. A reminder. Of what? Of what power did. And what it didn't fix. He nodded. A truck passed far off, dust lifting and settling again. Neither of them moved. They'll tell stories, he said. Let them, she said. We'll tell ours by staying. He looked around the cabin, the patched walls, the sealed well beyond the window. "This place keeps things," he said. "Only if someone stays to listen," she replied. They worked until noon, small things, necessary things. A nail tapped true. A shelf held. The stove drew clean. The cabin stood straighter for it. He stopped once, watching her hands. "You don't rush," he said. "Rushing breaks," she replied. When the sun climbed, they rested. He poured water. She drank. "You afraid of the nights?" he asked. She shook her head. "I was afraid of running." He let that sit. "Me too," he said. The afternoon cooled. Shadows lengthened. She laid the bedroll where she wanted it. He didn't comment. Choice had learned the room. The badge caught the last light and dulled again. She left it. He didn't reach for it. They sat together as the day closed, not close, not far. The cabin creaked, settling into itself. "Shelter's not a place," she said softly. He turned to her. "Then what is it?" She watched the light fade from the floor she had cleaned, the names she had kept, the door that stayed closed because they chose it. "Someone who stays."